just want to wish everybody a good morning, Ecom.
Good.
I'm just kidding. Good morning, Ecom. Ooh, 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 ooh.
It's a great day to be at Ecom, right? Is that what
It's
they
a
think?
great day to be in e-commerce. It's a great day to be here, David Yarbrough.
Yes, it is. Very,
The
very
Yarbrough
nice to
man.
have me.
I am glad to have you on the podcast. I'm a little sad that we're not in the garage. Have you looked into that?
I have looked into that. I haven't. You talking about my AC garage?
Yeah.
So it got postponed. It's still not up.
Ay, what's happening?
I know. They're too busy. It's too busy. See, people like me that are trying to do stuff for comfort we get put on the back burner to people that are, I don't know, hot.
Oh, so yeah, that's right. So the AC folks are like, hey, we'll get to your garage after people who actually need help.
Correct. All the elderly and people that are just dying of this 106-7 degree heat we're having. Real temperature heat, by the way.
Ay. Oh, so that's not the what they call it, the heat index.
Yeah, anytime you hear in the Texas area, especially the Dallas area, if they say, "Hey, today we might break a record,"
Ay,
and it's August 1st, that's a problem.
Oh man.
So yeah.
So you guys, like everybody else, right? It's just been on fire. But I know here where I live in Louisville, Kentucky, we always go by the feels like, because the temperature could be 90, but because of the humidity level that we get here, it's insanely high humidity. It could feel like 110.
Correct. And see, for us, it's been a little different lately. It's just, I don't even know why. It's just some evenings it's like no humidity, and then others it's brutal. So
It's been miserable. I wish that it could. And another thing I've been reading about in the news lately and had posted about on LinkedIn, I wanted to kind of jump in here because it's been something of a topic of interest, it feels like. It has to do with our good friend Temu. Our good pal Temu that we've been talking about and just sharing some interesting numbers on. And I wanted to start off with a question. David, I like to give you some trivia here.
Okay.
What if you had to guess a number off the top of your head of the total that China does in e-com business in a year? What number would you say? What's the range here?
I would say they're doing between 50 and 100 billion dollars.
That is close, but not even actually. In 2022, China did $3.085 trillion.
Okay, I was off a little bit. I was off just a little bit. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of those memes you see where it says the difference in a millionaire and a billionaire, where the millionaire boat is a nice yacht and the billionaire boat's like 10 times the size. That's the difference in billions and trillions.
Well, and that's the interesting thing is, in the same time span of 2022 in the States, and I'm pulling these stats off Statistica.com. Shout out Statistica. I love that site. American e-commerce accounted for $819 billion. Right? So this is a David and Goliath story of when we think about e-commerce in America, we typically, because it feels huge, and it is big, but it's not huge. It's not that much of the GDP.
Yeah, the whole process of thinking about the amount of money that's being spent in that, my mind immediately starts to go to, how do you compete against that? And really, it becomes it's not a, I need to buy stuff, I'm going to go buy the cheapest stuff, because we all know some of it's, I'm not saying anything that's not true here. Some of that stuff you get e-com wise straight out of China is going to be cheaper quality in some cases. But it's almost like, do you fight the battle? Do you try to compete? Because you can't compete on price, right? It's almost like you have to compete on what I just said. You got to start saying that stuff's just cheap. You don't need it.
On quality, but also the principle that I think on the post I did, it's over 14,000 impressions, people clicking on it, liking it, sharing it, right? The nerve, I think I touched on that, and I could be wrong. So the folks who did comment on there, comment here. Let us know if we're seeing this differently. It's the principle of the matter. When I'm buying, and I've said this before, so I don't want to sound like a broken record, but when I'm buying off Temu, I'm buying from a Chinese manufacturer direct. They don't even have a warehouse in the States, unlike Shein, who does have a warehouse distribution facility in the States, meaning they're importing the goods in mass and they're preparing it in mass and they're having American jobs. These could be foreign folks coming over and working in the factories and whatnot, but they're bringing and living in the States. So another thing to go down, I guess, another day, but when I think about Temu, that's not the same story.
No. To me, it starts to beg the question, you know how people will talk about, hey, I want to go eat somewhere today. Well, let's go eat and shop local. And then what people forget is by shopping and eating local, they say, well, I'm not going to go to the local chain, like a Chick-fil-A. Well, hold on a second. That Chick-fil-A is owned by someone who lives in your community.
Yep.
And so the mindset, to your point, now with Temu, that's not the case.
No.
They're not here. There's no jobs here. There's nothing. You are buying straight from a Chinese manufacturer, and it's getting shipped over direct to your door. Period.
Subsidized by the Chinese government. People are like, oh, it's $1.96 for these Apple AirPods, free shipping. Well, the shipping to you is free, but it's being subsidized by somebody, and it's free because they know if they can grow that app to the size of an Amazon or even a third of that, they are siphoning our economy and putting it directly into the Chinese economy, growing their factories.
That's right.
Not ours.
So I'm still I still have not ordered anything from Temu.
Thank God.
So maybe that is, I don't know if you have or not, but I still have it. I have stuff in my cart because I went and looked at stuff just because, we've been talking about it a lot. But I don't want them having my information. So if I do it, if I do it, it'll be done through a third party, some sort of a, you get your credit card company will give you like those digital cards or whatever. That's probably what I would do.
Fair enough, right? I mean, that was the battle with TikTok for the longest time. The American government was not happy. But I mean, no, let's explore that side of it, because beyond the principle of the matter, it's the security of the matter.
That's right. That's exactly my point. How comfortable do we feel?
Your banking information, your personal information.
Right.
All the time we're talking about, hackers of whatever country getting our information. Some are even domestically trying to get our information. But you are correct in that way. You're downloading their app to your phone, which gives it permissions. A lot of people don't look at those app permissions, but there was a famous one, Suabway, we'll call them, had an app that they launched, and if you downloaded the app and bought something from it, you got a free 6-inch sub. But what people didn't realize was that it had access to your contacts, your photos, your text messages, your web browser, your Facebook. Like, it gave them access to everything, so they could give you the kind of marketing material to help you go buy more Subways or Soupways or whoever it was, Sandwich Peoples. And they had to walk all that back because of that.
Yeah, you watch. That will be the defense against, once this starts to take more shape, which it already is. If Ray Roberts' LinkedIn post can get 14,000 people talking about it, not that you're not important, you're very important, especially in my life.
Hey, just to you. Not, right. I mean, maybe my wife and kids, but anybody else.
By the way, I clicked that 14,000 times. No. But
makes sense.
No, now it makes sense. But no, seriously, that you start to magnify that. People are going to start talking about it. Then you're going to start coming up with a way to overcome it. And I'm telling you, the way you overcome that, it's fear. It's the fear of you're supporting everything that we talk about. That we're fearful of. It's China. economically, it's your data, it's all those fear things that
The
get us all every day.
world war of our age, the world war of our generation, is an economic battle. It's a battle for resources, but also for superiority over economic markets. China recognizes that. I think there's a lot of political things going on in the world right now, but all this is sort of gerrymandering when it comes to the economic powers that be. At what point does the American government say, "Hey, Temu, you're not going to just bring," because the taxation on one unit of a mouse is very, very different than it is on 100,000 of these. What do I call them? Mice? of a computer mice. So if I'm importing just one unit, it may not cost me really anything in terms of tariffs and whatnot. But you're bringing in a boatload, now you're a business, right? So these are different taxations. Well, at what point does the American government say, "Hey, Temu, you're not going to do that"? That's because that's a problem.
Well, you know where I feel like it's going to go, and I don't know, when you said that just then, it made perfect sense. I think what you'll start to find is the U.S. government will say, "Okay, you're going to buy from a site that's not in America, and the products aren't even made in America. Oh, we got a special tax for that."
I agree.
Just as they taxed, when the internet went through the whole taxation, which now it's 95%. Every once in a while, you'll find someone that doesn't charge tax. I never get that, but you almost feel lucky. Hey, I'm not paying tax. It's like, I don't know why, but okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, you got to wait. Think about it in the way of like what's that called when you're in a neighborhood? The help me out. They make sure your grass is cut.
Oh, the HOA.
HOA.
Yeah.
I think of it like an HOA in this case. I need someone to protect the value of American business, right? I need an HOA to say, "Hey, American people, fine, you want to get what you think is a good deal. Here's why it's a raw deal for Americans." And yeah, you're right, David. It should be taxed differently. Or there should be some additional, if the website doesn't originate in some way or form or fashion. And I know we're adding layers to the government that I don't necessarily want, but I want that HOA. I want that protection of my business value and of American value of jobs in our economy.
That's right. It starts to get into, in my world, how you look, the differences in, like, you have a Republican looks at something one way, a Democrat looks at something the other way. Then you have the libertarians in the middle that say, "You know what? I don't care what you guys do, just don't bother me with it. As long as my life's good, as long as I'm good, I don't care what my neighbor does." And in reality, to your point, we don't care. I mean, e-commerce is great until it's not. And then you're right. The HOA concept of that, I feel like it is almost this is going on a limb, but it's almost a threat to our sovereignty in being able to operate. Think about it. That could rob us of trillions of dollars. At least almost $1 trillion in sales if they were to take it over.
Even if they got half the size of what our market is, or a quarter the size of what our market is, because they're offering great deals. And even people, the thing is that people aren't educated enough to understand when they're buying. The general buyer, I'm saying, isn't educated enough in this circumstance, in this instance, to understand what it means when you're chasing down a $1.97 deal. And you look on Amazon, they're comparing it to Amazon, saying, "Oh, well, it's $6 on Amazon. I'm saving. I'm getting it's a great deal." The guy and gal and person and people who buy and sell on Amazon are buying in bulk. They're bringing it in. They're warehousing it here.
Correct.
Or they're warehousing it in Amazon. And it's American jobs. And it's people who are coming to this country because this is one of the greatest countries in the world, right? It is a sovereign nation, and people can find sovereignty here. Mm-hmm. But if we're buying and we're moving our money over to the Southeast Asian market, I think it's a bad thing. And I'll give you an example of this in India itself, right? So since 2015 to 2022, and I posted this in the article too, and I've got the links on it to back it up. The market, or the import share from China to India has risen by 90%. to over $136 billion, right? They're importing stuff into India and selling it on Indian marketplaces like Flipkart and the like. But what is that doing to local Indian businesses because they don't have an HOA? They don't have the oversight like America does. So we do have a lot of protections, but India doesn't. And if you look at what it's doing, and you think of India, what do you think of? Like street markets, right? Vendors selling stuff, and they've got those spices everywhere. That is disappearing in droves, and the poverty levels in India are increasing at insane levels.
Yeah, that's where your problem will come in. And we won't have that issue here, I wouldn't think. However, what we will have is it's almost like Americans tend to want, I don't know why, but we're just intrigued by this great deal that we think we're getting on something. And I think a few episodes back we talked about the quality issue of that. You're sacrificing the quality for a good deal, typically. And I had examples of that. But really it's that mentality of I want it quick, I want it now, which that's an interesting side note. They're not getting it quick. You know what I mean?
Not at all.
So you're having to rethink your buying process and go, I am saving $5 on this, but man, I may not have it for 2 weeks.
Well, didn't you have an experience of that recently with some wire connectors?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. The quality was horrible. Now that came off of Amazon, but it came from China.
Right.
You know what I mean? But oh, absolutely. The quality was horrible. I mean, it just was terrible. I could not use it. It could not be used in my application.
Walk the people through what happened. What was it?
Oh, it was everything about, I bought these connectors to use on my car and thinking I just needed to make a quick wire, and rubber's rubber, right? I'm not a scientist. I mean, that's what I bought them for their actual application.
Wait, you're not.
I'm not. I don't. I know no one expected us on this call today. But,
and on that bombshell.
Yeah, I'm sorry to people that always ask me scientific questions. I'm not one. but I'm really good at making stuff up. And yeah, so I bought them for their use case. That's what they were for. And sure enough, I went to go use them, and they don't work.
They don't work.
Yeah. So lesson learned. I went and bought the same product made in America. I paid a lot more for it, probably 5 times more, but it works perfect. So there you go.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what you're going to find. I mean, now, I'm not saying on everything, but I mean, and we had this whole discussion on a different call. There's certain things that are perfectly fine to buy like that. I mean, whatever. But I'm not sure if I'm willing to pick and choose. I mean,
nothing ever works for everything, right? It's always like a give and take and a balance to things. I think really my overarching concern is that let's go through a scenario and say, hey, Temu decides they are going to move into the States and they're going to open warehouses here and go through the proper channels. This is a different conversation. I'm not against importing goods from China. I've worked in imports for many years and exports. So I fully understand how that works and why it's a good thing, and I'll be a big proponent of that, because we do buy a lot of Chinese made goods.
Sure,
they are much cheaper when made in China because of exploitations and things. It has to be argued. So there's a lot to consider, but the fact of the matter is we don't make these goods in America. If we did make these goods in America, they're going to be way higher. But that goes back to those protections we have in place. What's the biggest problem here when it comes to made in America? Is it that the goods need to be increased in price to make them in America? Or is it that corporate profit is going to be reduced? And therefore the CEOs and the folks making 30, 40, 80 million dollars a year would have to only make $15 million a year in order to actually make goods in America. Is it greed?
To me, it could be, but I really think it boils down to each consumer has to make the decision about what you buy and whether or not you're going to buy made in America or not. I personally am big pro American products. When I just got done with a huge project I did, most things I bought on it, in fact, if not all, I'm pretty sure all, were made in America, and I spent more, sometimes double, to make sure I got the actual parts that were manufactured in the United States. It's bottom line, and I knew it. I could have spent half as much, got the off-brand. I say off-brand, just, and they may have been fine. But I had another example the other day. Same thing happened, but here's the weird part: it was a cheaper manufactured U.S. product, but they were trying to compete with the big boys. This is car parts again. I don't want to bore everybody with what it is or who it was. Doesn't matter. But it was just interesting that the finished product, it had something that was not really machined correctly. Now, it wasn't mine, but somebody showed it to me, and it was like, well, there you go. Now you know why it's less than its counterpart that is still made in America. But yeah, it's crazy, dude.
The thing about made in America versus manufactured in America, so there is a big difference in those two things. And most people, I don't know, maybe some people do, but most people I don't think understand the distinction between that. When something's made in the USA, it's more than likely that all the parts are manufactured, or most of the parts are manufactured in China, shipped into the USA, and then the final assembly is done here to some parameter or some degree, and then it's shipped to the end consumer. But then there's manufactured in America, where the entire process is American. It's all done here, made here, built here, etc., etc. There are some who would argue that one is better than the other. I would argue that neither matter. You're contributing to the American economy more when you do manufactured in the U.S., sure. You're still contributing to the economy when you do made in America, but you're still contributing to the economy when you buy from American-based distributors of a Chinese-made or whatever-made product.
Correct.
In either case, you're feeding a family.
That's exactly right. I mean, as we begin to break this down more and more, we get into a word that comes up for me would be dependency. We always look at dependency. Dependency, we always look at a bad term. Oh, dependency, that means you're on drugs or whatever. It's like, no, we are all guilty of dependency. I'm going to give you an example that doesn't have anything to do with buying, but it happened the other day, and I don't know if people are aware of this. Do you use Ring products, like the Ring doorbell and all that?
Yeah.
So Ring had a nationwide outage the other day. And I'm not sure if people know that this happened, but it did. And here's how I found out it happened, and this is what it did to me. And I don't consider myself dependent, right? I don't consider myself someone who's like, oh, I got to have this going or whatever. I was headed out to an out of town for the weekend, and I was checking on something at my house after I left, because that's kind of habit to look, oh, did I shut the garage or whatever? Well, I couldn't log into the Ring, and it logged me out completely. And I thought, oh, it must just be me. So I asked my wife, I said, log into yours, and she couldn't. And then my friends we were with, they're like, we can't either. And I'm like, uh-oh. Or the internet, guess what? Ring was down, like everywhere, like globally. Just, and they don't even know
I had no idea.
On. Well, and that's what's funny about it. It was down for a while, like an hour. I don't know. Okay. The funny part is, during that hour, I was highly uncomfortable that I could not know what was going on at my house. But I got to thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's it. If we cease to have technology right now, I mean, we're screwed.
We'd be out of a podcast.
Well, we'd figure a way how to make this. We'd get on a ham radio and make this happen. I'm just kidding. But
Carrier pigeon.
I'm telling you, yeah, carrier pigeon. But I'm serious. We are so connected, and I'll take it back into the e-com world. I want it now. I need it yesterday, and I may not even need it, but I want it, and therefore I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
And that changes everything. Oh, I want it cheap. That's the other one. There's a sidebar to that. I want it cheap.
So the cheap thing is an interesting one, and it's really an our generation thing. I grew up with parents who grew up with parents that were Great Depression kids. They sewed their own dresses. They grew their own food. They did everything that they could themselves, and they saved every penny, and they found a good deal. The generation of kids coming up today, and there's a lot of statistics around this. I could pull some and link them. The average teenager who buys online, price is the third thing they consider.
Wow.
The first is how fast can I get it?
Yep.
The second is, does it match what I want? And the third thing is, yeah, okay, if it's a decent price, sure, but it's not their top priority. And in most cases, I think it was like 75% of those polled in that sort of teenager to mid-20s generation of this current generation of teenagers in mid-20s, they said they would pay up to $15 more to get the product fast.
Yeah, it's a mindset, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, I've done it. I've looked on a site and saw it. I can get it, but it's going to take a couple more days. And I go to Amazon and it's a little bit more, and I'll buy it because I can get it the same day.
Get it faster, yeah,
or whatever. I'm totally guilty of it.
Immediate satisfaction, and I do hope that everybody was immediately satisfied by this episode of Intangible Commerce. This was a hard hitter, and I think it's important that we start to talk about and uncover these kinds of issues and things that exist within the market and bring that forward. I mean, that's what intangibility is all about. We're making tangible the things that are sort of not really discussed that often.
That's right. That's right. We want to tackle the tough issues in America. Commerce.
And I think on that bombshell that Dave is not, in fact, not a scientist.
Not a scientist. Don't quit calling. I'm not a scientist.
Stop asking him scientific questions. He doesn't know what a polymer is.
I'm not going to write another movie like Oppenheimer ever again.
That was first and last that he's ever going to do. And on that bombshell, Dave, send him away.
Commerce is not commerce unless you buy something. Keep that in mind.
Keep that in mind while we say goodbye, e-commerce. E-commerce away.
Oh, man. Good times.
See you guys. It is stopping. At some point, it will stop recording.